How are we doing? Hi, Robin. Good evening. Evening all. Hey, Satyam, let me put on my spectacles. There we go. Now I can see you. Lovely. Oh my goodness. 11:30 a.m. Vancouver. Welcome. Welcome, Gail, Lorraine, Karis, Luigi. Luigi's here. Oh my goodness. Okay. So we've got a couple of minutes to go. Hi, Alison, Vera, Anna. You're very, very welcome. It's good to see you all. Good to see you typing. Okay, the light's good here. I can't get any better looking than this. I do apologize. Okay. Let's see. Hello, everyone. Some of you were with me earlier on the South Bank, and now we're on the North Bank of the River Thames, that is, in London, of course. 7:28, coming up to 7:30 London time in the evening. So a lot of people have finished work. They're on their way home. And I'm just going to start a bit of work for you now. In a little while, just less than a minute. 2:29 p.m. in NY. Hi, LEG. Little hand going up there. Hi, Diana. Nice to see you all. Okay. Stephen Journey in Arkansas. So many years, I used to say Arkansas. So many years. I'm sure a lot of people still do. Crazy people. And hi, Christina. Oh, it's chilly tonight, but I've got a few layers on. And I've got a lot of body fat to keep me going as well. Lorraine said it too. Hi, Sarah. Good to see you all. And there we go. It's gone blue, which means my time is coming. Hey, folks, I'm Gerard, Jeza, Gerhard, Gerardo. Call me what you want within reason. But we're on the North Bank. We're in London, of course. We're near Victoria Embankment Gardens in an area called York Buildings. It's a nice quiet side road to begin. Don't call you too late to dinner, Robin says. Call me whatever you want, but don't call me late for dinner. Good work, Robin. I'm going to use that on my next tour. So I'm going to turn you around straight away and let you know a few things about this area. Firstly, if you have just joined Heygo, I joined a month ago, my first tour. I didn't know what was going on when I was watching. I took about 400 postcards and probably gave about 500 tips. I just kept pressing buttons, but I enjoyed it. So you're very welcome to press the postcard button, which should be at the bottom. Anything you see that is interesting on the way around. And of course, I'm not going to tell you, but you're very welcome to press the tip button. It's how I get paid. And Heygo makes some of it, and I make some of it as well, which is nice. It's the way it should be. Share the love. So we're coming down to York Buildings, and this area here is the underground drinking and eating area for Gordon's Wine Bar. We're quite near Embankment Station, but I wanted to start down here. Thank you, Deanna, for showing people how it's done. The Kit Kat Club in Berlin. We might get to that in a bit. But this is the York Watergate. It's quite an interesting place. It's been here since the 1600s. What happened in England was the River Thames got a bit ugly, And a man called Joseph Bazalgette decided to beautify the river and also redesign the sewer system. So in here, it closes in the evenings, of course, are the Victoria Embankment Gardens. And the blue you see right in the distance, the light, is the light of the Royal Festival Hall and the South Bank Centre on the south side of the river. Just up here, you might see the London Eye, British Airways London Eye, as it used to be known. And the gardens in here were built in the 1870s. I do apologise that you can see some of the railings, but it's the only way I can get us to get a view of it. I tell you, it looks a lot lighter on the screen than it does in real life. But this York Watergate was here in the 1600s, and it was built by a man called George Villiers, who had a house on this site. George Villiers was the Duke of Buckingham, and this was an exit from his house onto the river. So if you remember, I just said to the left there, we've got the gardens. It's about 80 metres to the river. And this is what Joseph Bazalgette did. He beautified the river. He reclaimed some of the river and built nice new houses along it and a sewer system, which was the main reason for it. So he cleaned up London. This Watergate has been restored over the years, but it's been here since 1626. There's also a bandstand in there from 1953. We're just going to walk up one of the little side alleyways here. Yeah, the Festival Hall, Neil, is different than the Royal Albert Hall. We've got the Royal Festival Hall, which is on the South Bank, which is quite near the National Theatre and the Globe. And then we've got the Royal Albert Hall, which is in South Kensington. Maybe we'll take a little trip there one day. Slightly different buildings. The Festival Hall is from 1951. Now, this is one of those roads, Buckingham Street, where if you watch things like Mr. Selfridge, anything set in the late 1800s, early 1900s, they film here. Because if you can use a bit of CGI to get rid of 20-mile-an-hour speed limit signs, and you can tape down some of the double yellow lines underneath us and get rid of that big building in front, it can look quite Victorian. I'll turn around, sorry it's so fast, but you can get a good sense of what it would have been like in the 1800s. But we're going to travel to an area named Villiers Street. So the man that designed this, almost this entire area, was called George Villiers. He was the Duke of Buckingham. And he sold the land off years later, but he demanded when he sold it that he wanted his name to be remembered all around. So we've got a George Street, we've got a Villiers Street, we've got a Duke Street, we've got a Buckingham Street, and guess what? There's an of alley. So he even wanted the bit in the middle of Duke of Buckingham to be remembered. Now, Villiers Street is strange these days because they've still got the decorations up, which is very bizarre. They're still celebrating Christmas here on Villiers Street. You see that in front? It's quite a cool little road. It leads down to Embankment Station at the end. Embankment Station was built in the 1800s as well. And there was a man called Oswald Lawrence, and he was the man that recorded all of the Mind the Gap announcements. They've changed now. There are many people that do them. But the Northern Line platform on Embankment is one of the only places that his voice is still heard. because his wife wanted to hear it one last time and they've decided to leave his voice there forever. This is the Princess of Wales pub, which is one of those Nicholson pubs. And there's a Rudyard Kipling dining room in there as well. And just a bit further down, we've got a Kipling house. Just want to show you that Rudyard Kipling lived here for many years, the white building in front of us. Obviously, Rudyard Kipling, who wrote The Jungle Book and The Man Who Would Be King, amongst others, lived here 1889 to 91 and wrote the autobiographical novel The Light That Failed from this very building. And there's the other side, the entrance of Gordon's Wine Bar. There we go. Go back up and look at that Princess of Wales pub. Interesting, if you talk about pubs in this area, this man, William Nicholson, who started this brewery here, he also built Lord's Cricket Ground and the pavilion at Lord's. But it's one of those pubs because just behind us you've got Charing Cross station, where people finishing work will have a quick pint before they go home. But now we're at 7:30, most people have got their trains home already. Now we're going along the arches, the Villiers Street arches. So we're underneath Charing Cross station. The word Charing or Charing means turning in the river. And at Charing Cross, the River Thames turns around. So if you ever go to Westminster Bridge, which I took a tour there the other day, Westminster Bridge doesn't go north to south because of the turning. It goes east to west. It's our first theatre, hidden theatre of London, the Charing Cross Theatre. Quite a small scale place. It's got a nice late bar in here. It's one of those places that if you are in a show, if you're lucky enough to be in one in the West End, you can come in here for a drink afterwards. If they know you're in a show, they'll let you in for a late drink. Delilah has said she misses London. Well, there you go. Hopefully this is making you miss it a little bit more. Yeah, this bar here, about 15 years ago, I had a little drink in here and saw a few friends and they said someone great's playing on the piano tonight, and it was Jack Black, the big film star, was just playing on the piano, and I'll be honest, he was a bit drunk. Yeah, so this would have been a music hall. Let's see if we can see in. There is lovely chandelier above there, and the theatre itself is actually down there. It's on the tall bar. And right opposite, we've got a nightclub, Heaven. So Heaven is a gay club. It holds about 1,500, which is kind of crazy considering the doors are so small. So the entrance is here, the exits are everywhere. So when they need to get people out at the end of the night, or 7 o'clock in the morning, as it normally is, there are many exits. But this used to be a club in the 1970s called the Global Village. And there was a man called Derek Frost had seen how popular the club Studio 54 was in New York and decided to build a super club here and called it Heaven. 1982, Richard Branson bought it, and what he said at the time, he said he knew the value of the pink pound. It became one of the first clubs in the country to play Chicago house music. It's been sold on twice over the years, though, so Branson doesn't own it anymore. We're coming up to the Ship and Shovel which are two pubs across the road from each other. Two pubs, the Ship on the left and the Shovel on the right. Now underneath us are cellars, and the cellars were bought by the two pubs in the 1990s. The owners of the two pubs decided that it would be a good selling point because they shared the cellar together to merge the pubs. So the pubs are now forever known as the Ship and Shovel. And, one of those hidden pubs of London. I don't want to shove the camera in people's faces, but people are enjoying a good old drink in there. Yeah. And the pub on the left-hand side is nice and quiet. But you can drink in there as well. Let's move on. Probably called the Ship and Shovel because of the coal labourers in this area would have shoveled the coal onto ships. So they had two names, the Ship and the Shovel. Just want to stop here because this is a nice postcard spot. In the distance we have the Sherlock Holmes pub and a nice gas lamp. It's electric now, but it looks like a gas lamp. And we'll see the front of the Sherlock Holmes pub in a bit. One of these nice dark alleyways of London. Up on the right here, Benjamin Franklin's house. The building itself dates from the 1730s, and it was the last known standing residence of Benjamin Franklin, the founding father. Franklin did a bit of everything: writer, scientist, publisher, was a diplomat, philosopher. You know, he was a busy man. And the records show that Franklin lived in this house and worked here for about 16 years. It's now a museum, not open at the moment, it's too late at night. It's been renovated, but it's got the same floorboards, ceilings and staircases as it would have had. Thank you, Julie. This is an interesting story. When the renovators were working on it in the 1990s, they found the bodies of at least 10 people buried in the basement. And for a while, people thought, was Benjamin Franklin a serial killer? But obviously he wasn't. They realized when they looked through the records of who lived here that at the time, a surgeon named William Hewson was found, that he lived here for a while. And although surgeons needed bodies to study and dissect, there were certain laws regarding what you could do and what kind of bodies you could dissect. So they think they were his bodies, and Franklin probably knew about it. He might not have known the problems around them, but 10 bodies found there. Hewson became known as the father of hematology. A lot of his findings are still used today in modern medicine. As we go up, we're approaching the Strand. We're going towards Leicester Square, Trafalgar Square, and Charing Cross. I do another tour of the Strand area as well, but that's for another day. There's, to the right of me, this chunk of concrete is a ventilation shaft for Charing Cross tube station. Now it looks really boring on camera, but as I go up, I'm going to turn the camera around and we should be able to see the ventilation shaft. Just give me 1 second and we shall turn around. So, the building right in the centre of the screen is just a shaft that pumps in air and pumps it out again. Just a concrete block full of hot air. As we go up on the left, we approach Trafalgar Square, of course. Now, in the 90s, London Transport decided that they wanted a Jubilee line extension to the east of London. And the line ended at Charing Cross. The station before was Westminster, and they wanted to go on to Green Park. Problem was, if they continued the line from Charing Cross to Green Park, they would have to go straight through the foundations of Trafalgar Square. So they cut out Charing Cross, and it goes from Westminster to Green Park. So underneath here, we have a disused platform, which they have filmed Skyfall, they filmed Paddington, The Bourne, Ultimatum, Doctor Who, all down there. So if you ever see any of those films and they're fighting on a platform or they're going down escalators, it's just underneath where we are. The reason I suppose I'm telling you this is it is interesting, I think, but we discuss these unused bits of London, Strand, train station, etc. It's almost impossible to film in certain locations in London. They either close them off, or they film at 5 o'clock in the morning, or they have to get rid of things like lampposts and road markings. Here it's quite easy, because you've got, apart from the fourth plinth at the back of Trafalgar Square, you've got the National Gallery in front of you. So as long as you film early enough in the morning, you can get away with it, make it look like any time in the last 200 years, or 150 years at least. Problem as well in London is that so many of the theatres have changed names. Here in Trafalgar Square used to be one whole square, and all the buses, the night buses, would go from here every night. But if you got off at 6 o'clock in the evening and you were here, you could catch a bus from here anywhere in London to any of the theatres. Problem is, over the years, shows now run for 20, 30 years. In the case of The Mousetrap, for 69, close to 70 years. And people have started to name the theatres after the shows that are on in them. So it becomes very confusing with buses and taxis and so on. And you ask a taxi driver, do you know where the Adelphi Theatre is? And they say, no, I don't know where that is, because now they're just looking at the show names rather than the theatre names. So we've got the Queen's Theatre, which is now the Sondheim Theatre. We've got the New London Theatre, which has recently been renamed the Gillian Lynn Theatre. The Albury is the Noel Coward. The Comedy is the Harold Pinter. The Strand is now called the Novello. But the one we're going up to now, right in front of us, in the centre of the screen, is the Trafalgar Theatre, which for many years was known as the Whitehall Theatre, and then the Trafalgar Studios, and now it's known as the Trafalgar. And the other side of Trafalgar Square, we have the Duke of York's Theatre, which for many years was called the Trafalgar Square Theatre. Sorry if I'm confusing myself as well. By the way, this is Admiralty Arch, just here, built in 1912. Various government buildings have been here. If you've ever seen the great dystopian film Children of Men, they drive through here. And behind Admiralty Arch is the Mall. And the Mall is painted red, which we wouldn't be able to see tonight anyway, and it leads all the way up to Buckingham Palace. So it was painted and designed to look like a red carpet. So let's go to the Trafalgar Theatre. Currently showing Jersey Boys, the third theatre it's been on at in the West End. I don't know what it's like in other parts of the world. I'm not sure what it's like on Broadway, but Do shows transfer much? Do they go to bigger theatres or smaller theatres when they're not as popular? Because in the West End that happens all the time. I'm just trying to navigate some traffic here. Give me 1 second. There we go, that could have been me. Dawn said I tried leaving a tip, but it's not letting me. Sorry, I'll try again. Well, Dawn, thank you for trying anyway. It's one of those great traffic lights. It gives you about 5 seconds to cross. But in front of us, I think right in the centre of the screen, you should be able to see the Elizabeth Tower, which is the large tower of the Houses of Parliament, with the bell, Big Ben. Traditionally, people have said over the years that Big Ben is the actual tower or the clock itself. But I'm sure you know by now that's not the case. The bell is Big Ben. The Whitechapel Bell Foundry made Big Ben. They made the bell, which is at the top of the Globe Theatre, which rings at the start of the show. And they made the Liberty Bell. Oh, yes, here we go. Look at this. It only took half an hour to cross the road. We're doing well. Let's see how quick will it take to cross this one. I'm just going. I'm going. Okay. Let's just go past the Tesco van. So the Trafalgar Theatre is one of 6 theatres in the West End that opened in the year 1930. Art Deco style, as you can see. It's got some lovely hidden lights, recessed lights. At the moment, the show's not on tonight. Some of the West End theatres, there are shows on. But as we looked last night and the night before, quite a few of the theatres in the West End now have Sunday evening shows. The Trafalgar has, as we've said, been known by many names. Most recently, the Trafalgar Studios. So about 4 years ago, it had 2 theatres, one 600-seat and one 300-seat. But it's now gone back to a large theatre, which holds about 900. It was originally called the Whitehall, and it changed its name. Home to the Brian Rix farces. England is known for their farces. There's another man, Ray Cooney, who was a farcer. But Brian Rix had his farces here. They were always about men getting caught with other women, that kind of classic comedy. It's also been a television studio. It's been a war museum. It's been an adult review bar. And if you went into the stage door, which is round the back, it's right next to Admiralty Arch. Sad there's not a show on there tonight. We're so used to shows during a weekday and then not on a Sunday night. It seems very strange. So we're on Whitehall, leading up to Downing Street, which is home to, well, it seems, if you believe the stories, and Downing Street is the biggest party venue in town. It has been for the last 2 years anyway. And there's the entrance to Horse Guards Parade. If you're ever here during the day, you might see one of David Garcia's tours, London. You might see the guards out there during the day, and people in front of them trying to make them laugh or talk. But this is Whitehall, and we're taking a left down a road called Great Scotland Yard. Now, for any Harry Potter fans, I'm going to try and get a view for us here. If you know the film The Deathly Hallows, I think it's part 1, when Harry, Hermione and Ron drink polyjuice potion. This is the view that Ron is looking at as he's looking down towards the Ministry of Magic. Just there. Katie is asking me, what is my very favourite show of all time? That is a good question. So I think my favourite show is The Producers, Mel Brooks's musical. Now, I didn't see it on Broadway. It was on at the Theatre Royal Drury Lane with Lee Evans, a great British comic, and Nathan Lane. It was originally going to have Richard Dreyfuss, but he did his back in rehearsals. But it is the funniest thing I think I've ever seen. Another one of my favourite shows, productions, was an Edward Albee play called The Goat with Jonathan Pryce. And that was on at the Apollo, Shaftesbury Avenue. The premise of the story is a man who is married with children falls in love with a goat. Now, it seems absurdist, and it is. It's an absurdist play. But it was one of the most moving things I've ever seen on the stage. I won't say any more than that. The Goat. So Great Scotland Yard was home to the police force for many years. And there's some of them there. And a lot of the police horses are in stables just around here as well. Now, we hear about Scotland Yard all the time, but Scotland Yard is now a little bit further down. There's New Scotland Yard, but this is Great Scotland Yard. It's possibly where the phrase Great Scott comes from, which is an old Victorian phrase. When people exclaim, they say, Great Scott. The architects Inigo Jones and Christopher Wren lived around here. But what we're looking at directly in front of us is the Civil Service Club, which opened in 1953. Now, the civil servants are the office-based workers of the government. The first job I ever had, which wasn't a Saturday job, was working for the civil service. And it was my now brother-in-law and my sister who got me the job there when I was 18, near the Tower of London, just opposite. And if you are a member or have been a member of the civil service, you are working for the government in an office capacity, and you get automatic membership of this club no matter when you join the civil service. But you have to pay for the club, of course. But the civil servants raised money in 1953 for the Queen's wedding to the Duke of Edinburgh. And as a thank you for the money that was raised as a present and the 2 silver trays that they bought her and Prince Philip, she bought them their own club. And they often call it the Sanctuary, so that they can make sure that they can chat in here and have a drink and have a meal, and MPs, members of Parliament, are not allowed in. So it's a break from the politicians. Now again, just to look down, this is another one of those roads that can be filmed with only a little bit of CGI or early morning, and you can make it look quite Victorian. The film Atonement had a few scenes set here, and also a car chase in a couple of the Bond films. Looks nice. Looks nice, the light this time of night. Let's carry along. 18 years old when I was a civil servant. Such a respectable job, 18 years old. And look at me now, wandering the streets for a living. Who would have thought it? Michael H. said he used to be one as well. I was proud to do it. That's the last office-based job I ever had when I was 18. And look at me now, 6-7 years later, I'm doing this. That was a joke, folks. So do you remember we saw the sign of the Sherlock Holmes? This is the other side of it. Yeah. Claire said she's a civil servant for the Welsh government. Good on you. Good on you. I used to think when I was 18, I was told by a lot of the other staff, they would say to me, you know what, Gerard, you can never get sacked from the civil service. They'll never sack you. It's the only job. They'll never get rid of you. They'll just move you on somewhere else. But I very nearly did get sacked. But I left. I left of my own accord. I was very proud to work there. So here we are, the Sherlock Holmes. Now, Sherlock Holmes, as we know, didn't exist. Created character, as was this pub. It's a pub from the 1800s, but in the 1950s, 1957, it was named the Sherlock Holmes. And inside, they've got Sherlock Holmes' study, so Holmes and Watson's study upstairs, and the top floor is made to look out exactly like Sherlock Holmes' room would have been. It's a nice pub. I was planning, and I know a few of you have said this to me, to do a tour based around Sherlock Holmes. But there are so many locations in London, and some of them are so far apart, it's taking a bit of work. So I will get there. I might call it Sherlock Holmes and the Beginnings of Detective Fiction or something. Now, we're wandering up to the Playhouse Theatre. Just wanted to show you the Corinthia Hotel. I don't know if there's anyone from Budapest on the tour, but I believe there's a Corinthia Hotel in Budapest as well, which looks exactly like this. I had a TV show on ITV a few years back all about this hotel. The rooms in here, some of them are £10,000 a night. So maybe after tonight's contributions, I might spend a night here. One of those hotels, as you walk in, there's a piano straight in front of you. And earlier on, there was somebody playing a piano. Oh, it's lovely. Yeah, I don't think they'll let us in there. So in front of us, we have the Playhouse Theatre. I wanted to show us something else just before that. So a lot of writers have lived in this area as well. A lot of diarists. The diarist John Evelyn, who wrote about the plague and the English Civil War, he lived in this area. But most famously, Samuel Pepys did as well. It seems that every single walk I take, every single tour, I say Samuel Pepys lived in the area. He just seemed to turn up everywhere. He wrote the diary for 9 years and gave us a lot of information about culture and people's eating and drinking and entertainment habits. But just here is a house that Herman Melville, the writer of Moby Dick, lived in 1849. He would have hung out in this area. There would have been ships, there would have been boatmen hanging around here because he was so close to the river. 2 years later, he wrote Moby Dick. So it's possible that it was all inspired from living in this house. Okay, let's go back down so we can see the Kit Kat Club, otherwise known as the Playhouse Theatre. So it's showing Cabaret at the moment, if you don't know the Kit Kat Club, starring Eddie Redmayne and Jessie Buckley, great Irish actress. So it's all been made to look like a club. And the entrance is around the side, in what would have been the stage door for any other show. But I'm going to stand in the middle of the road on a traffic island so we can get a good view of it. But the show has started. Everyone has to queue up just in front of us here. And they go in through a side door. Quite a cool way of doing it. And when you go in, nobody sat in regular theatre seats. They've done out the auditorium, the ground floor anyway, stalls, so it looks like a cafe stroke Berlin nightclub in the 1930s. Nice way of doing it. I did a play here, 1984. That wasn't the year I did it in. I wasn't born. No, I did a play called 1984 here about 5 years ago. And I'll be honest with you, it was quite a depressing play. If you know the story of Winston Smith and O'Brien, his torturer, it was a difficult run because there was no laughter to be had on stage. All the dressing rooms in the Playhouse Theatre face each other down one corridor. So we had this idea very early on in rehearsals to buy some artificial grass, and in the corridor where all the dressing rooms met, we put the artificial grass down and we put bunting and little cafes and stalls up, and we called it the Village Green. So in between shows, we'd sit out in deck chairs on the Village Green. So it was a nice way of getting through it. So this is our Playhouse Theatre. You saw, Luigi saw Pirandello's Naked there with Juliette Binoche. And yes, Jay, George Orwell's 1984, but it was a theatre version. And a lot of people have asked me over the years, how did they create the rats in the cage? Well, it was clockwork. It was animatronic. And the guy playing Winston, when he was all tied up, holding the cage full of rats, would press a button anytime the rats were supposed to make noise, and these clockwork rats inside would run around and a speaker would go off. Quite clever. And then we've got Embankment Place in front of us. So we're back full circle where we started about 40 or so minutes ago. Right in front of us, got a cabman's office. It wouldn't be big enough for a horse and carriage, but it's big enough for 12 men, as it would have been in the old days, to sit and have a cup of tea. And it's going to reopen very soon. It's been closed for a little while during the pandemic because you can't socially distance in that. And then just behind us, I just want to show you one of 3 bridges which are right next to each other. Hungerford bridges. There are 3 of them. There are 2 footbridges, and there's 1 rail bridge in the centre. These bridges were created to hide the rail bridge, which is on our left, from public viewing, because it's quite an ugly bridge, and they thought it's nice to have 2 footbridges, one either side. And I wanted to leave us with a couple of nice views of London. On the right-hand side, something called the London Eye, changes colour periodically throughout the night. It's a nice view. The river, as we said, would have been quite a bit wider. So over the years, it started to flow in this area quite rapidly. But if you went to areas like Putney or Kew, the river still stays like a lake, because there are the old muddy riverbanks still there. If anyone's been on one of my Southwark tours, you may know that this also looks like the Millennium Footbridge, but this one doesn't wobble. So you can hear the trains on the left going from Charing Cross all the way to Waterloo, or Waterloo East, and then on to London Bridge and out to the southeast. So I thought I'd leave us with a nice view of the west, and in particular Westminster Bridge right in front of us. Robin has said the bridge to the left looks like the Manhattan Bridge connecting Brooklyn to Lower NYC. As far as I know, Hilary, the bridge is about 15 years old, but I might be wrong. The London Eye, the British Airways London Eye. And it's still moving. So it's still open. So you can get down here, get a ticket. And of course, the buildings in front of us, directly in front of us on the right-hand side, of course you've got the Houses of Parliament, or the Palace of Westminster, as it's properly known. And all the buildings in the centre of the screen are in Vauxhall. And they've all come up in the last 5 years or so. Vauxhall wasn't much of an area except for traffic and some old government buildings. But if you went there now, the amount of buildings that have gone up, all residential as well. It's quite gentrified around there now. So it's become like a mini Manhattan in that area. Now, Katie has asked, of all my theatre roles, what is my favourite? Well, sometimes it's not the role, sometimes it's the job. And I had a great time doing the play Fatal Attraction about 7 years ago, based on the movie. That was one of the most fun experiences I've ever had in a theatre, directed by Trevor Nunn. But I had a very small part in that. My favourite role, if I could play it professionally, is Iago. I've never played it on a London stage. I played it in theatre school. I would say the best thing I've ever done, the best writing, is Alan Bennett's A Chip in the Sugar. Alan Bennett's Talking Heads. He wrote these one-person monologues, and I toured with that a few years ago. It was about 6 years ago I did it, and it was an hour long, and no word of a lie, I still remember every single word of that monologue because the writing was so good, it stayed with me. And it's a good warm-up whenever you're doing an audition or you have to do something even like this and you have to speak clearly for quite a while. It's good to do a monologue, a speech that you know, and because I know that so well, it's often that one. I must do it one day, Ellie. Yeah, I was in touch with Heygo about doing maybe little play readings from home, little chunks of plays, and we can all suggest them. I would like it, but I don't know what the copyright sort of ideas are, so we'll find out. We'll find out. Now, I'm going to put you back to me. If you're eating, calm down. Don't worry. I'm sorry to spoil your meal. Here I am. Here we go. So we're going to carry along the bridge, and I'm going to walk my 12 miles home. I'm joking. Now, folks, I loved it. As always, I always enjoy your company. I just hope that you did. We didn't see too many theatres, but there are a few hidden theatres in London, a few hidden gems, and I wanted to put them in a bit of a framework. I'll be in town tomorrow again. I'll be doing a Southwark walk towards the Globe from this area, actually, and I'll be doing another West End walk later on. I could do Shakespeare, Claire said, helping people understand the language. That would be good. That would be good. There's so many ideas, isn't there? You people are very, very kind. Do follow me if you want. Thank you, Tish, for putting up what I'm doing tomorrow and reminding me as well. That's always good. And if you liked it, please write a nice review. And if you didn't like it, I would say don't. Thank you, Gail. Thank you, Arlene. And I will see you folks tomorrow, hopefully, or very, very soon. And thank you, Marta, and thank you, Robin. I'll leave you with another view of London to the west. Take care, folks. Lots of love. Bye-bye. Thank you, everyone.